This is the Gospel of Matthew 24 and verse 6, and it reads, it says, ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled for all these things must first come to pass. Matthew 24 and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. Shalom. First and foremost, I to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem, Wakar Kadash, and Heavenly Father, true name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Ba'Hashem, in the name of Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, Balashon Kadash, the Holy Tongue, and I said Barakatham to the elders and apostles, Wa'akim, Wa'akwaf, and I say Shalom. And this is a sit-down lesson of this recent news article that goes into right along with that Matthew 24:6, wars and rumors of wars, as we've been seeing the ongoing back and forth, up and down tensions heating up between Iran and the United States, especially with the many protests that have been taking place over there in Iran from late December and all the way to now of this year. And this is a news article from Radio Free Europe Liberty, published by Kian Sharifi, if I pronounced the name right, from RFE/RL Radio Farda, as of January 26, 2026, and it reads, likelihood of U.S. strike on Iran very high, amending military buildup and drills. It says a billboard of Tehran in Buildup Square depicts Iran missile strikes on U.S. aircraft carrier on January 26. It says the United States is deploying jet fighter, air defense, and an air carrier with thousands of troops to the Middle East in a move that has heightened tensions with Iran, increasing the likelihood of a military action. Experts say the U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened strikes against Iran after authorities unalive thousands of people in a brutal crackdown on anti-government protests. Trump recently backed away, although he has not ruled out an attack on the Islamic Republic. Experts say that the military building up, along with the planned U.S. naval exercise in the region, increasing the pressure on Iran and provide more offensive military options if Washington chooses to attack Iran. This can be a message to Iran that we are ready and our capabilities are in place. Farzandi Nandami, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, told the RFE/RL Radio Farda. It says Nandini added that the chances of U.S. strikes on Iran is fairly high, and pointing to the overtly aggressive military building up in the Persian Gulf. It says the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and the three accompanied destroyers are heading towards the Middle East, carrying over 5,000 troops. The U.S. Central Command has said that the F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jet was deployed to the region. Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force said on January 25th that it was set to launch a multi-day military exercise across the Middle East to demonstrate the ability to deploy, despair, and sustain combat air power in the region. The activities reassessed last year's when the United States moved military assets to the region before Israel and then Washington carried out an airstrike targeting Iran's nuclear sites. The Islamic Republic, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, the elite branch of Iran forces have responded by raising alert levels and urging Iran back armed groups in Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen to support Tehran. And the Houthi rebels, they definitely been doing that as well too. And all the pro-Iranian groups. It says a fraught of risk. The U.S. media reports saying Trump is weighing up a range of military options against Iran, from a sustainable aerial campaign that could last weeks or months to moderate and largely symbolic strikes targeting Iran security forces. The non-military options, including additional economic sanctions, which they previously did once again, have always been reportedly discussed. Experts say that because you're going to see an economical sanction war, nuclear war, terrorist war, trade war between the nations of the United States armies versus the Iranian armies, and the Israel Defense Force versus the Iran as well too. Experts say that U.S. military actions Iran is fraught with risk could drag into the entire region. Tehran has vowed to hit U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf as well as Israel, a key ally. The, the cost unpredictable retaliation against the U.S. allies and attacking the Persian Gulf. Shifting regional partners don't want to pay that price. The Marad Khan Sharifi, a former Iranian diplomat, to Radio Farda, if I pronounce his name right. It says regional countries have privately urged Washington to exercise restraint, concerned that a U.S. Iran conflict could trigger a wider conflict. Khashoggi argued that an aerial campaign alone without ground inclusion would not lead to region change if that was even Washington's end goal. A ground invasion of Iran, the largest and most popular country in the Middle East, is considered a non-starter by military experts. If a file open like the sword of Damocles hanging over the regime, but air strikes alone cannot topple the regime or eliminate its security forces, he said, speculating that government forces will simply hit through strikes and reemerge afterwards. How might a strike unfold? Nabali says planned U.S. military exercise in the coming days could provide cover for actual operations. He said that the United States could use electronic warfare cyber attacks to disrupt Iran's radar and communications networks. Stealth and bombers and fighter jets could then penetrate air defense and radio silence, striking command centers and missile sites. But Iran would never be defenseless in the case of a conflict. Experts say Iran poses cruise missiles capable of threatening U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf, confined waters, as well as ballistic missiles that could hit regional bases. Iran has even included. It says that Iran processed cruise missiles capable of threatening U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf, confined waters, as well as ballistic missiles that could hit regional bases. Iran has even included to this erecting a larger banner in a major square in Tehran over the weekend. This, despite, despite a U.S. aircraft carrier struck by a deluge of missiles. It says even if Washington resort to a larger symbolic strike, Iran is likely to respond in kind. Nabadami has said, once again, this is the book of Matthew 24 and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, right? Iran versus the Israel Defense Force and the United States armies and allies with the Israel Defense Force going against the Iran and pro-Iranian groups. So this is what you would consider a modern day wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. I'm going to go over first and we'll close it out. Matthew 24 verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Right, that's what we hear, wars, rumors of wars. Iran versus the United States heating up. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See, there should be no trouble for all these things must first come to pass, but it's not yet. Matter of fact, bring up that Joel. And this is the prophet Joel, chapter 3, verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war, wake up the mighty, let all the men of war draw near the come. Right, that's what the prophet Joel was speaking about. And that day the Father's going to continue to put that warlike mindset on these arms of nations. And that's what we see from the United States armies and the Israel Defense Force armies. And from Iran as well, too, as it is heating up between these nations. As the nations continue to be gathered up over there in the Middle East. Joel 3 verse 10, beat your plowshares and swords and appointed us in the spears and let them be grown. Right, because you had the military of Iran last year mentioned that for the pro-Iranian groups and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard groups and the pro-Iranian groups to prepare now somewhat of a potential nuclear strike from the United States and Israel Defense Force, which is imminent. We're seeing signs of it. So you're going to have a Dragons of Arabia. You're going to have the Muslim Brotherhoods. They're going to team up together in those proxy groups and pro-Iranian groups throughout the whole region over there in the Middle East of a potential getting prepared for a potential nuclear strike from the United States armies and the Israel Defense Force armies. It says, beat your plowshares and swords and opponents at the spears like the weeks are strong. Right, so the Houthi rebels, they're going to threaten to resume more military strikes over there in Iraq and Syria because you have military bases of the United States armies and the Israel Defense Force armies and their allies to beat your plowshares and swords and opponents at the spears and let the weak sound strong. Right, so let the weak sound strong. So with that, hopefully this set down less was edifying of this recent news article of the increasing wars, rumors of wars, like it says in Matthew 24 verse 6. As it says again for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, as of January 26, 2026, and it reads again, the likelihood of U.S. strike on Iran is very high, amending military drills. So with that, likely of all praises and glory and opportunity to Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh Hashem, Kwakadash, and the Heavenly Father, true name is Yahweh, and the Son begat the Son, Bahashem, and Hamashiach Kadashah. Those are the true names in the ancient Hebrew, Lashma Kadash tongue. And I say Barakadam to the elders and apostles, Wa'akim, Wa'akwa. Until next time, I will say Shalom.